The Nigeria Meteorological Agency has predicted near normal onset and a normal to later than normal cessation for the 2020 seasonal rainfall. The earliest onset date likely to occur on February the 24th around coastal zone of South-South states, while Sokoto, Kebbi, Zamfara, Katsina, Jigawa, Yobe and Borno are likely to have their onset from June 2nd. What are the implications of these predictions for farmers and their likes? We'll look at that on this week's episode of the program. Hello and welcome to Dateline Abuja. I'm Ibrahim Adra. We thank you for joining us. And today we're coming all the way from the offices of the Federal Capital Territory Administration here in the nation's capital, where the minister summoned an emergency meeting of experts as well as senior administration officials. Now, that meeting is ostensibly to ascertain the status of the Federal Capital Territory following the outbreak of Lassa fever in neighboring states. I'll bring you all the details in the course of the program. But in the meantime, I invite you to listen in on our conversation with the Director General of the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency on the implication of the 2020 rainfall prediction. Engineer Clement, thank you very much for joining us on Dateline Abuja.
Thank you. Nice to be here again.
The Nigeria Meteorological Services Agency has just made its prediction for rainfall for the year 2020 known. And as is traditional, we also know that it's only a matter of time. In a short while, maybe a week or two from here, you'd also be telling us what the flood outlook would be like for the year. But quickly, let me get your thoughts on what you make of the prediction by NIMET.
Well, the prediction by NIMET for 2020, there's a slight difference from what they predicted compared to what was for 2019. For instance, they say that there are two things you normally consider: the onset, the beginning of rainfall, and then cessation date. So for this year, 2020, from the prediction, rainfall will start a little bit early compared to last year. For instance, in the southern part of Nigeria, they expect that by, I think around the 28th of February, it should have started raining in the southern part of Nigeria. And then in the north, it might start around 2nd of June, around the area of maybe Sokoto, Katsina. This is the onset of rainy season, according to NIMET prediction. But there is a false start of rainfall, which is not the real onset. Maybe you could, somebody say it rained in Lagos at that time, this one. That is not the onset of rainy season by the prediction.
Yeah, because
that could be leading to farmers.
Yes, that prediction here is saying rains will come earlier than is normal in most parts of the country.
Yes.
So, like you're pointing out, it's probably a false start. That might be a false start. What is the implication of this to farmers and the generality of the people?
Yes, that's why it is good for farmers to wait and get the predictions. Like I was at the NIMET public presentation of their 2020 SRP, seasonal rainfall prediction. It was made very clear there. And good thing, there were so many farmers that came to, testify that really the predictions worked for them. So the implication for farmers is that wait until these predictions are made, so that you don't go and begin to farm and then maybe you have a dry spell of about a month or even 3 weeks, and the things you have planted will just die off. So wait for the prediction to come.
Does this in any way suggest that perhaps this year would see very heavy rainfall in some part of the country, if not all? Does it in any way suggest that?
Well, to me and to us in the Haroji family, we feel that from their prediction, it's likely going to be beyond what happened in 2019. For instance, since it is starting early and then ending a little bit late, like in the southern part, it will be around the 28th of December. you have a very long stretch of the rainy season. Likewise, in the north, around 26th of September, that is beginning to cease. Now, it means whatever be the amount of rainfall, like in the northern part of Nigeria, they say about 400 to 800 millimeters of rainfall, and in the southern part, about over 3,000 millimeters rather. If you have such an amount of rainfall, and it falls with a short period, it has the potency to gravitate to flooding. But if it is spread, it will be tiny. It may not gravitate or generate much flood. But then there are so many other parameters that I can mention here that we use to determine whether there will be flooding or not. We talk about the geology of the area, the topography, the land use pattern, then the river measurement. What is happening in the upper catchment of the Niger Basin? Like whatever happens in Guinea, where River Niger begins from, affects us here. Whatever happens in Cameroon, with regard to River Benue. So we are yet to know what is happening in those areas to be able to say categorically this will be the trend of flooding for 2020 in Nigeria.
Don't they also have predictions of their own? Is it possible to perhaps liaise with these places? Because, like you said, whatever happens there has an implication down here. Is it possible to perhaps latch on to their own predictions and see if we can work out something ahead?
Yes, there's a collaboration.
Okay.
Under what we call Niger Basin Authority, NDA, with headquarters in Niamey, the 9 countries that make up the basin, Guinea, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, Benin Republic, Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, Cameroon and Chad. There's a collaboration among the things. So we will yet get their prediction, what is being globally for the 9 countries. We need to know those things so that we will factor them in our own prediction in Nigeria with regard to flooding.
Let's recall 2019. I mean, the places that suffered the most in terms of flooding. Is it likely that the same places, if we get that amount of rain that you talked about, falling at a short period of time, are those places the same places that you think might suffer the same flooding?
In fact, ironically, that has been the trend. That there are 3 types of flooding, and maybe just categorize it into 3 types of flooding. One is the coastal flood or coastal flooding. We know the coastal states in Nigeria. Rivers, Bayelsa, Cross River, Ondo State, Lagos, coastal, the beach, the ocean can surge. It can cause flooding. Then you have the urban flooding, which is caused by the local rainfall within some locations, and then aggravated by lack of adequate drainages and so on and so forth. Building patterns and so many things like that can now make it cause that kind of flooding, which we call urban flooding. Then the third one is the river flooding, which is determined by what happens mainly in other countries outside Nigeria.
It's a little bit of a problem for the Nigerian farmers, isn't it? You get the rains, you farm, and then flooding comes, and like we saw last year, a lot of farmlands were swept away with crops on it. That's such a huge dilemma for the farmer, isn't it?
It is.
So what would be the way out? Does the farmer now say, look, okay, I know that this place is prone to flooding, so perhaps I shouldn't farm this year?
In fact, we discussed it extensively the other time we had a meeting. They need to bring in insurance companies. Let them know what we are doing. We have Nigeria Agricultural Insurance Corporation and other Nigeria Agricultural Company, Nigeria Agricultural Company. Then that of insurance. They insure the thing that farmers have done. So we are still a way we can incorporate in what we do so that they'll be aware. And then if there is a adequate enlightenment, extension workers who get to know what we are saying, and the farmers are properly enlightened, that may go to some extent to reduce the negative impact. But very much importantly, they need to get their crops insured adequately so that the necessary compensation could be done in the event of flooding.
That's a critical issue you just brought up, enlightenment for the farmers. Because I was just going to remark, when NIMET was releasing that prediction, you did say some farmers were there.
Yes.
But of course, you and I know that the bulk of the farmers wouldn't be in Abuja to see that. How does this message get to the average farmer in faraway, remote areas, say in Nasarawa State or in Kebbi?
That's what calls for the state government to be involved. Like there at that meeting, so many state governments were there, so many states. If the states buy into these predictions, they should be able to take the responsibility of translating the predictions to the grassroots. You have local government areas. Extension workers should be engaged. Let the state governments, the local government areas, or the council chairmen and so on and so forth be part of it. Let them not just, it's not an academic issue. It's not a theory. It happens. So they could be involved. They should be involved rather, so as to be able to carry the message down to the grassroots, so that the farmers will hear and take it. Many of them were testifying that day, oh, the other year I didn't get this information earlier. I did this, see what happened to me. But since so number of years now, we've been having bumper harvest. It is possible if government is involved at a state level.
Mm-hmm. Well, so far from your years of experience working in your department where you head at the moment, what has been the response of these state governments? I mean, would you say it's satisfactory thus far?
Honestly, I would say I am not. Because even when we now take the initiative to come to some states, to let them know ahead of time what they are likely to experience in their states, you will see that the response is low. Turnout of the necessary officials of government to be there, you don't get such a response. It is at the critical moment, like say September, maybe August, September, when it has become so obvious, this flood has caught up with them, that they begin to do kind of fire brigade approach. Maybe begin to call us, please, what is happening here? But I was shocked. I won't mention the state. They constituted the SAG, government constituted a team for flood, blah, blah, blah. I look at the list, I saw it. I said, yes, Commissioner for Information is there. I made a call. I put a message. Till today, that is the latest discussion. He said he will go back to me. But when the now flood came heavily on the state, then I begin to call every now and then, please, which are the local government in my state that are going to be affected. But when we realize that, when I call out the person, send text messages, be Commissioner for Information, I felt that I have gotten the person that should be able to carry the message to the state. But nothing was done. So in most cases, we're not quite happy that many states do not key into it.
Mm. Are we going to get to a time when perhaps we begin to think of a legislation that will compel states to perhaps listen more attentively to you and implement what you're telling them? Right now, the law setting you up doesn't provide that.
Our agency doesn't have that provision in the law or in the act for implementation or penalty, but there are existing regulations that can be used. By that I mean, for instance, if it comes to awareness creation, each state has SEMA. Each state has. And then NEMA is there as the umbrella body that tries to, works with them. Each state government has urban and regional planning departments. Many of them have ministers of environment in most of the states.
That's true.
This is where they should start. They shouldn't be expecting a policeman from Abuja to come and tell them, do this, do that. I'm quite glad to, in our FCT last year, I think about 150 houses were marked for demolition. I think some of us must have seen them where the bulldozers were at work, trying to remove some structures that were within the flood plain that ought not to be there. So I believe that there are already existing framework upon which enforcement will be done.
Well, I hope everyone is listening to your message, and we do look forward to that flood predictions when you eventually come with it.
We'll let you know.
Mr. Clement Nze, engineer, I'd like to say
thank you.
Thank you once
Ibrahim,
again for joining us
you.
on the program.
Nice having me
We
today.
truly appreciate this.
Thanks.